Don't be alarmed. It's only a laser sword fight. Don't be scared. It's only the Death Star destroying another world. Relax. It's only a movie, and it's all for fun. Director George Lucas and 20th Century Fox present Star Wars. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
Hello everybody, this is the Bookworm and welcome to FabRadioInternational.com. My name's Ed Fortune and my co-host is Nympha Hayes. Say hello.
Hi everyone.
So today on the show we're going to be talking about Dystopia.
Woohoo!
And so what book will you be reviewing?
I'm going to be reviewing The Hunger Games.
And I'm going to be talking about Guy Haley's Crash, and we're going to have a nice chat about dystopian novels in general. And also, we'll be have an interview with author Sarah Cawkwell.
Awesome.
And so we better get on with the book news. I suspect.
Go on. Hit
Okay,
us.
so Christopher Brookmyre, who is generally an urban fantasy author who's written all sorts of interesting and fun stuff, has got a book out called Bedlam on January the 21st. Now, new books, even though this is the Bookworm, new books are not news. But what is interesting is that Christopher is doing a thing called Bedlam the video game, which will be available on Steam in the summer, so it'll be a little bit later after the book launch. And the plot of Bedlam apparently is about this guy who wakes up in a video game. And he runs around as the kind of cannon fodder figure in a video game. And the video game itself apparently harkens back. It's got bits of Pac-Man, bits of Manic Miner, bits of Skyrim. It's got, it's a remix of popular video games while someone runs around. But it's an FPS, which is interesting.
Okay, what does that mean for us non-gamers?
First person shooter, so it's a one guy with a gun shooting things, but it's also that first person interactive style thing that you get in various video games.
Very awesome.
It's not the first video game to do, it's not the first book, sorry, to do video game tie-ins. There's been video game tie-ins for as long as I can remember. Years ago, when I was a very small child, I can remember being given the Horse Lord, which was this sport fantasy novel. And there was a video game called The Horse Lord, and it was terrible. There was, it was literally you press the shift down key and ran over things. It was like a racing game of horses. It was terrible, absolutely awful. But they've moved on. I don't know if you saw the Feel Better games, The Night Circus, which is a online game that you go on and you interact with the characters from the novel.
I haven't actually. In fact, I should really get around reading The Night Circus because it looks such an interesting book.
It's a great.
I gave it as a gift, but I don't have a copy.
I mean, Brookmyre's Bedlam is Orbit, but Night Circus is Random House, and Random House have also got a thing called the Black Crown. It's the Black Crown. It's not Black Crown Circus. It's the Black Crown. Black Crown Project, which I played and I had to stop playing. It's one of those. Oh God, no! It's just horrible.
Oh, is it?
It's very good, wonderfully written, but you wake up with some sort of mutant worm monster kind of Cthulhu-esque horror thing, and I normally love that sort of thing. But I picked it up, and the mood I was in at the time, I was just like, no. Need to be able to sleep. Very Silent Hill and very dark. So we've strayed away from big news. So shall we talk about How to Train Your Dragon and Griselda Cowell? She's got a thing called she's got a reading project, a reading website essentially, where she encourages kids to read, and she's doing a Christmas reading extravaganza on her website where she's encouraging people to bid kids to bid 3 books over Christmas and read those 3 books over Christmas.
That's fantastic.
And that's in with the reading agency as well. So they're hoping for it's in conjunction with libraries and schools and that sort of thing.
That's pretty good, I think.
Anything
that encourages people to read.
Yeah, pretty much.
And for kids as well, so exciting, and because the book itself is quite prominent at the moment with the movies as well. It's obviously a way to sort of see your characters come to life both ways. But yeah, very exciting.
Did we talk about the owl delivery service last week? I don't know if we did.
I don't think we did.
Waterstones, being sarcastic as they are, responded to Amazon's bluff, shall we say. They had this rather charming. Amazon did this thing where they appeared on the American documentary news TV show 60 Minutes, and towards the end they go, and we have this helicopter that can deliver things for you, and they never actually say, if you watch the thing, they never actually say that they're going to use it. They just imply that
there is a helicopter somewhere in the Amazon headquarters, a helicopter away.
The technology is possible. Well, we knew that already. The technology is. I think that was
airmail. Really?
Really, you can send things in very expensive ways very quickly to people. Isn't that called a courier? But no,
it's a secret. It's a trade secret.
Because it's a helicopter. Obviously, it's exciting and new. So Waterstones, in their dour kind of English sarcastic way, said that they were going to be training a fleet of owls.
Oh my God, that would be above and beyond awesome. Can you imagine kids? In fact, can you imagine anybody around the world getting a book by owl?
It'd be a terrible idea.
No, it would not. It would be like stepping into Harry Potter.
You see, I was trying to convince some American colleagues of ours a little while ago that that's what Britain really is like.
Yes, it is.
Everywhere except
totally.
London.
We have owls and wizards, and it's all very wonderful.
This is an owl delivery service, but yes, they call it the OWLS delivery service, and they've been posting on the Waterstones Oxford Street, which is fantastic Twitter if you've not seen it.
Yes, it's very, very cool.
They've been posting pictures of. It's an excuse to post pictures of baby owls being cute and walking into things.
Nothing wrong with that.
And anyone who knows anything about birds themselves will know that owls are really dumb. Yeah, they're this ancient symbol of wisdom, and they are really, really, really dumb. So yeah, I think that's us for the news pretty much now. This is fabradiointernational.com. You can catch us on Twitter on FabRadioInt, and you can also find our show on @Radio Bookworm.
I've been conscious, Rose. Do you know?
Couple of days.
Do you feel weak?
I feel strong. I feel very strong.
You can't trust your best friend, your neighbor, not even your mother. 1 minute, they're perfectly normal. The next,
Rabid, it will prey on your mind. Rabid, Certificate X, at a cinema near you now.
Hello everybody, and this is Ed Fortune for the Bookworm, and you're listening to FabRadioInternational.com. Which, if you've probably tuned in to catch us, it's probably how you've got to us in the first place. We are available on social media. We have a Twitter account, which is Radio Bookworm. We're on Tumblr, because we're all modern and clever and stuff, so we're on also Radio Bookworm. And you can find us on Facebook. Just do a search for the Bookworm Radio Fab International. You know what Facebook's like. It's there, ubiquitous, kind of absorbing everything.
I don't even have a Tumblr. Let's face it, I'm just not cool.
Our Tumblr is mostly full of very, very silly gifs. It's a lot of messing about, and occasionally going, listen to our show. It's on SoundCloud, which in all likelihood you've probably listened to us on Listen Again or SoundCloud, rather than it's Sunday and it's midday and you're probably still asleep right now. So, or in America, gentle listener. So really, really. Totally irrelevant. Totally talking nonsense right now. We've descended into nonsense. It's gone very early onto the show. It's
chaos, I tell you.
Should I do a book review? Should I talk about?
I think that would be very wise.
So I was going to talk about, because our theme is broadly dystopia. Broadly dystopia, and I was going to talk about a novel by Guy Haley called Crash.
Okay.
Now it's out on Solaris, who are one of those many Nottingham-based, actually I think they're Oxford-based sci-fi publishers who do kind of cracking sci-fi reads. And
what's it about?
It's one of those. The broad plot is set in the not too distant future, and it's a very believable not too distant future as well. Everyone works under the auspices of one of the percenters, and the percenters are the tiny percenters of people who have all the wealth. And essentially, if you're not rich, then your life pretty much sucks. And all the resources have been used up, pretty much. And things cannot be sustained. It's getting to the point where it's obviously things cannot be sustained. And the thing with this kind of royal class of people who have all the wealth is that they don't even, it's got to the point where they don't even have to manage it themselves. They have a computer program which isn't even, it's not even allowed to be sentient. They've been very careful to. It's incredibly complicated software that monitors all human interaction, monitors all human transaction. They're very careful to keep it kind of dumb and down, and everyone's like, well, no, it's not slavery because it can't be smart, it can't be intelligent, it can't, it's a machine that we have built.
Of course
And
not.
they announced that they're going to leave for the stars. They've got this technology. They're going to spread out as a whole kind of exodus, and the percenters are on their way to colonize space. And the book focuses, it does that lovely thing of focusing on multiple different characters before settling on one or two of them. And in the first run up to the story, what we have is that we have a guy who, through no fault of his own, can't get a job. He's a very talented, very technologically literate, but because he doesn't have the right connections, and because he said the wrong thing to the wrong people,
Sounds
because
eerily familiar, doesn't it?
it does, doesn't it? Ends up in a situation where he simply can't get a job. He can't get a job. He gets an offer that he can't refuse, and all he has to do is put a simple subroutine into get onto a colony ship, put a simple subroutine onto the spaceship, which is the head colony ship that's going on to
I like how you say a simple subroutine.
very, very simple thing. This conspiracy will quite happily get him this job. You can therefore guarantee that his family will be fed.
Fine. Of
And
course.
he puts this subroutine in, and predictably it doesn't go to plan. Parts of it are very much, on the face of it, though, it seems to be a novel about emergent artificial intelligence, the dangers of greed and the thrill of galactic exploration. The central theme is about the nature of humanity, not only its avarice but its capacity to love, grow and learn. If you're familiar with Guy Haley's work, he is very much about the human interaction side of things. He's written, we've got another Black Library author as well, on the show as well, but he's written a lot of nice sci-fi things. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment.
FabRadioInternational.com.
So we're talking about Guy Haley's novel Crash. Ninfa, are you into that kind of dystopian sci-fi?
I quite am, actually. Yeah, I do enjoy a good dystopian book. Both sort of kind of fantasy and sci-fi based. This one in particular, Guy Haley's Crash, it sounds sort of more towards the sci-fi. You mentioned galactic, and that's exactly what was in my mind. Sort of this big, massive exodus to try and find a new place to sort of grow and rebuild humanity as we know it.
It's very strongly a dystopian novel, and I would compare it to, and you'll forgive my pronunciation. There's a 1930s, 1920s novel, 1920s novel by a chap called Yevgeny Zamyatin. Can you pronounce it, because you have better foreign skills?
Yevgeny Zamyatin.
We is the book. We'll just refer to We. And We is, it's not quite the same sort of thing, but it draws upon the same sort of dystopian idea where there's colony ships going into space. And through that metaphor for Exodus, the nature of the human soul, the nature of the human spirit is explored. And I would compare Crash to We, even though they're very different books, written on opposite sides of the century and very much different one's a 1920s novel, one's a 2010 novel.
Yeah.
They couldn't be more different in many ways. But the key kind of, at the end of the day, it's about the human feeling, and it's about the human right to expression.
See, what I like about Dystopian is the fact that, yes, most of them have sort of heavy sci-fi components, but you don't have to be a sci-fi lover to actually enjoy a dystopian book, because as you say, the human part of it is very much prominent in all of them. It's about that struggle and about how us as human beings react to everything that we know ending and having to start again and build it again.
I mean, Crash feels very real, and it's interesting because one or two of the characters aren't terribly likeable. I mean, one of the main guys is he's not very social. He doesn't talk to very people. He loves his family, and you can see why he does what he does.
See, I think I was talking about exactly this point you've just made with a friend today, and how about a great writer is the one that will make you understand that villain, or look like a villain character, but it might not be, because there's layers. I mean, nothing is black and white. Everything is sort of shaded, and I think that's really the mark of a great writer, when you can sympathise and understand those characters, even though you hate their guts.
Oh, I mean, when Healy is good, he's very, very good. I mean, he's done a fair amount of tie-in fiction. He's done a fair amount of original fiction as well. He did a thing called Skarsnik for the Black Library, and that's a toy soldier model who's a villain, an evil villain. And you kind of like the villain by the end of it. You don't quite like him. He is a nice, fun villain. It's a departure from him, because another novel that I really enjoyed by Guy Healy was Champion of Mars. Which again is all about dystopians. It's not all about dystopia. It's all about the rise of technology and the artificial intelligence, and how one is a reflection of the humanity of the other, and that works quite nicely with this sort of thing.
Sounds quite interesting. So, did you enjoy it?
I did. I liked it quite a bit. I
can tell.
I think we can. I mean, later on when we talk about dystopias, we'll talk about that tying into the whole kind of space exploration, and how it's quite a common theme. But rarely, it's one of those dystopian novels where they actually do go into space.
Yes.
But it's quite often in dystopian novels, they're always about to go into space, but they never do.
Yes.
Because it's all just to get the workers to work, so they're distracted by the fact that the planet is dying and that sort of thing. So yes, a lot of fun indeed, and that's available on Slowers, and you can get it on ebooks and all the other from your normal book peddler, I think. And this is FabRadioInternational.com.
This is Fab Radio International.
So hello, we have Sarah Cawkwell here for the Bookworm. Hello.
Hello.
For those who don't know you and don't know your work, if you don't mind, Sarah, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I can try. It's not terribly exciting, I'm afraid. I've been doing a lot of writing for quite a lot of years, but have finally kind of gone into the professional side of it when the first of my novels by the Black Library was published in 2011. I had to think about that. 2 years have passed since then, and I've slept occasionally. The first of those books was The Gildar Rift, which was a science fiction set in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. And the second novel published by Black Library was Valkyr the Bloody, which was in their Warhammer Fantasy universe. As well as Black Library, I've also done several short stories for Fox Spirit Books, an independent publisher run by Adele Waring.
So how did you get your break into the genre fiction writing?
Well, it's one of those questions that's quite hard to answer, really, because at the end of the day, I did it the same way as anybody else did. I got lucky. Black Library used to have a number of open window submissions, which they still do have open submissions, but they're a lot more focused now, I think, than perhaps they ever used to be. And one of my pieces of writing was picked up by an editor. He got in touch with me, said, I think if you tweak it this way, it could be really good. So I tweaked it that way, and he seemed to like it. And that was that, really. It's quite depressingly boring when you tell it.
And what advice would you have for anyone trying to get into the industry?
anybody getting into the industry, anybody who wants to be a writer, everyone will tell you this who is in writing, and that is, and it sounds stupid when you say it, right. A lot of writers who want to be published sit there and say, oh, I'd really love to publish a book or a story or a poem or whatever it is they particularly write, and then they promptly do nothing about it. And it is, tragically, it's not going to come to you. You have to go out there and get it.
What is the appeal of the Warhammer 40,000 universe and the worlds of Warhammer, the Warhammer Fantasy and the worlds of Warhammer for you?
For me, well, certainly the world of Warhammer 40,000. I sound ever so depressing, really. It's the despair of it all. It's the fact that it's the strapline for the Warhammer 40,000 universe is, in the grimdark future, there is only war, and that is exactly what it is. Everywhere you go, nobody's happy. There are no happy endings. It's all misery, darkness, blood, guts, and gore. I mean, what more could you ask for? And the Warhammer Fantasy universe is much the same with less spaceships.
It does seem to be very much a boys' club when you look at the list of authors and you look at the fan base. Does that matter at all? Does it make any difference?
It might look that way, but it really isn't. There's a lot of female readership. I've seen there's a 14-year-old girl at one of my local workshops who doesn't play, but she does build and paint, and I think that aspect of the hobby is appealing to a much wider audience than just the wargaming element. And I think that's the whole appeal of Games Workshop and Warhammer, is that it's more than just a game. It's a whole world, and you can get into it in whichever way you fancy. You can get into it through building and painting, by playing the game, by reading the books. There are role-playing games, there's computer games. It's just this vast universe that I think has broken out of the mould in that regard. So yes, on the surface, it does look like it's a boys' club, and I would agree that it's certainly male-dominated, but there is room for everyone in there. It's a pretty big universe.
With Fox Spirit, there does seem your work for Fox Spirit does seem to be much brighter and light-hearted. Why is that, and what should we expect from your Fox Spirit output?
Well, the first thing I did for Fox Spirit was a short story for the Tales of the Nun and Dragon anthology, and it featured a completely hapless hero fighting a dragon, and seriously, this guy has to be seen to be believed. He's a wannabe hero who's actually quite good at it, but mostly through luck rather than skill. And it came about at a time when I just finished writing The Gildar Rift and Valkyrie the Bloody pretty much back to back. That's an awful lot of grimdark for one person to take. So when Adele asked if I'd like to write a dragon story, my instant response was yes, but can I make it funny, please? And and so that's what it became. One of the other stories I've written for Fox Spirit, a short story of around 15,000 words called Bloodbound, is anything but cheerful. It's actually quite nasty. It's not really a horror story as such, it's fantasy, but there's a pretty nasty zombie in there. And that was good to write as well, because it fell somewhere between the very focused grimdark of Warhammer and something a little bit different.
Getting back to the Silver Skulls and Gildar Rift, should we expect to see any more of them?
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, there was a very, very short story as part of the Angels of Death series that the Black Library ran throughout the month of September, when they published 1,000 words short story every day from different authors surrounding different chapters. The Silver Skulls put in an appearance then, and there is most definitely something in the works for them.
One of the key characters One of the key characters in the Gildar Rift suffered a very grievous injury in the course of the adventures, without trying to give too much away. It felt almost like that was a metaphor for something else. What level of depth is there? Have you deliberately added to the Gildar Rift? Because I'm sure I could add layers on, but that would just be me trying to be clever. What deliberate themes are in there that you are particularly proud of?
In the Gildar Rift, well, it's the key thing with the Silver Skulls, as with any of the Adeptus Astartes chapters, is brotherhood, and it's all about being there for each other. And the Silver Skulls are slightly set apart from some of the other Space Marine chapters in that they're incredibly superstitious. And times change, and for years and years and years, I mean, these guys are second founding Ultramarines, so for years and years and years, they've lived their lives in this way, where a certain group of them are told what to do by the other group of them. And all of a sudden you've got this bunch of young upstarts coming onto the scene who are going, but why? They're starting to question their very existence, and that doesn't sit well with the older half of the chapter. And those bonds of brotherhood are starting to break a little bit, and it's all about maintaining a certain balance. I think it's a difficult thing, really, because there are so many concurrent storylines going on that cover different aspects.
Writing-wise, what other projects appeal to you, and what things do you hope to do next?
Well, I'm working on a couple of original projects of my own. One of those is a fantasy, one is an urban fantasy. I have a couple of things in the pipeline for Fox Spirit. I'm thinking, I mean, I've always read and written science fiction and fantasy. I don't honestly think that I could see myself writing outside the genre at all. I think I'd like to delve more into historical fantasy, not historical fiction per se, but historical fantasy. You know, what if type scenarios.
What particular writers inspire you, and what writers would you love to work with if given the opportunity? This sounds probably terribly cliche, but every writer inspires me, whether they're bad or good. And the only way you can learn is to read as much as you possibly can, and whether you enjoy what you read or not, that writer some way inspires you either to be better than they are or to aspire to be like them. That really does sound terribly cliche, but it is the truth. I mean, I've sort of reread things that I've written and I've gone, oh my god, that's a bit too much like this writer here or that writer there, maybe I should change it a little. I think everybody emulates to a certain extent writers that they like. If I just sort of look around my bookcase now, you're looking, I mean, obviously there's an awful lot of Black Library books on that bookcase. Dan Abnett, of course. I like to think he's pretty much everybody's inspiration in the 40K universe. There's books by David Gemmell, there's the Belgariad books up there, David Eddings, which I read from a very young age, those and the Dragonlance books. I mean, fantasy really was my sort of training ground. And then I moved into science fiction. And I go to the bookshop sometimes and I think, I'm going to get out of genre, and I just can't leave that corner of the bookshop. I just like, no, shiny. What is your Desert Island book? What is your one book that you would save if, you know, the Library of the World was burning? What one book would you rescue?
The Three Musketeers.
And the reverse of that question, if you were trapped in purgatory and there was only one book to read, and obviously this is the book that is there as a punishment, what would it be?
50 Shades of Grey. Or Twilight, possibly. I think it's a bit of a close thing. They may even be the same book.
And finally, what's your predictions for the genre world in the next couple of years? Where do you expect the book industry to go? What do you think will be the next big thing?
I think we'll see a swing back towards fantasy. Obviously, the second instalment of the Hobbit trilogy comes out towards the end of this year, and that always seems to bring with it a rush of people suddenly interested in fantasy and fantasy fiction. It's not for everybody. Some people try it and just can't get their heads around the concept of complete suspension of belief. But I think that there's been if you sort of watch the trends, particularly in terms of games and television and series like that there have been less science fiction and more fantasy. Things like Game of Thrones have been massively popular, and I sort of personally think that the book and the film and the game industry will ride on the tide of that success for a little while. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
FabRadioInternational.com.
And thank you very much to Sarah Cawkwell for that interview. Her book that she's got coming out soon is Heirs of the Demon King, is Uprising, June the 5th. It should come out, and she's also got stuff on the Black Library Advent Calendar, which will be coming out soon as well. If it's not out already, you have to go to blacklibrary.com and find out.
This is Fab Radio International.
Hello, welcome back. This is the Bookworm, and I'm Nympha Hayes. And today I'm talking about the Hunger Games. Now, if you don't know what the Hunger Games are, then you've probably been living under a rock. However, for those of you who haven't either seen the movie or read the books, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the book, and it's basically set in a very near and dark future. There's a reality TV show going on every year called The Hunger Games, and from the 12 districts that exist around the capital city, a boy and a girl are picked every year during the reaping, and these kids will then be thrown into this arena that gets created, and then they will fight each other to the death, and only one can come out alive. If you do win, your district gets special benefits like food and clothes and all the things that are necessary to live, and it allows the district a degree of comfort, and the winner and his family or her family basically get a new home and food, and they don't have to worry about dying of hunger until they die. Obviously, it's quite a gruesome game. I use the word, and the story revolves around Katniss Everdeen, who's a 16-year-old girl. Her name is put into the pot for the reaping, but it's her little sister Prim that gets picked. Katniss volunteers to take her place, terrified of losing her little sister, who's too gentle to even consider going into the arena, let alone win the games. And so Katniss and Peeta get picked for District 12, which is the miners' district, and they get sent off to the capital to get cleaned up and spruced up to take part into this TV show and try and win and survive, so that they can go back home and take care of their families. Now, for Katniss, it's obviously a hard decision. However, she's not a stranger to survival, because after her father died, she was pretty much the one taking care of her mum and sister. And yes, this is the core of the story. There's 3 books in the series. The Hunger Games is the first book, Catching Fire is the second book, and Mockingjay is the third book in the series. And this is published by the teen imprint of Scholastic. The book is by the wonderful Suzanne Collins.
FabRadioInternational.com.
So we are back with a Bookworm, and this is Nympha Hazer and Ed Fortune, and we are talking about the Hunger Games.
So if you've only ever seen the movies, or if you've only ever heard of the movies, how different is it?
It's pretty close. I think they've done a wonderful job of characterising the different personas from the book, and also they've picked amazing actors. Now, one thing that I would point out straight away is the actual kids in the book are a lot younger than the portrayal that you see on the big screen, which makes it a lot more sort of dark, because obviously, Katniss is supposed to be 16 years old. She's very, very young, and obviously the beautiful Jennifer Lawrence, who does an amazing job as Katniss, in my opinion, you can see that obviously she's meant to be, at the youngest you'd probably say 18, 19.
The thing I like about The Hunger Games is it's very much a very strong young adult book, in the fact that it deals with adult themes and grown-up themes, but it's aimed firmly at children.
Absolutely.
And it's one of those kind of tragedies of our age, I think, when it comes to the book game and the book industry, that because it came out roughly at the same time as the Twilight series, which are very different books.
So there's just nothing in common whatsoever.
But people who haven't read either, or people who don't read, seem to. I get annoyed at people who immediately dismiss Twilight anyway, which is a different conversation, a different show.
We'll get there eventually.
But with the Hunger Games, it owes more to Lord of the Flies. It owes
absolutely
more to 1984.
Yeah.
It doesn't owe a lot, and I would say this quite firmly, to Battle Royale, the novel Battle Royale.
Absolutely. We had this conversation, a little conversation on our Facebook page about, people that compare the Hunger Games and Battle Royale, and I think your point is quite strong. They are not the same.
It's more that Battle Royale is an adult novel written for a Japanese audience, and it's very much aimed at people who've just gone through the Japanese education process and kind of a bit angry at their teachers for good reason, because it's quite a strong
It's
process.
very strict. Yes.
And it's very much a polemic about Japanese society.
Yes.
And to enjoy Battle Royale, you have to know more about the world.
Yes.
Whereas the Hunger Games is a reflection of Western society. Very much so.
Yes, I would agree.
There's a wonderful thing that I think Hank Green was saying. He's a vlogger. He was saying that there is no President White in the real world. There is no one big bad guy. It's all just a series of sad affairs on top of sad affairs. And the Hunger Games. I mean, how would you recommend it to someone who wasn't very politically awake or interested in politics? How would you sell it to that sort of a person?
Well, you can look at it two ways. You can take it for a wonderful adventure, an awakening of, as you say, children coming into that young adult world. It definitely pulls at the heartstrings, so that there's an element of action and adventure and a wonderful story about a girl that's trying to protect her family. So if you're not into the politics, you don't have to read into that level. However, if you're an adult reading this young adult book, you can see all the different layers, especially in the second, but most of all in that third book, Mockingjay, where the real sort of political values and all the darkness that revolves around that come out. And I mean, I'm going to do a little of a parallel here, but just forgive me because it's completely different books. But if you read Harry Potter, the first book is a children's book, but as it grows, there is an element of that same political state in Harry's world that comes out later on, especially in the 6th and 7th book. And you can see that it's that journey from not being aware to opening your eyes into what the world around you is like.
Kind of want to read a book where Katniss kills Death Eaters now, but that's possibly just me. There's almost certainly fanfic out there that someone's written that novel.
Oh dear.
But yeah, I mean, I like the Hunger Games, and it's the sort of when I was growing up, the many last century.
Yes.
When I was growing up last century.
You're a vampire, Ed.
Last century, when I was a boy, they didn't really, there wasn't that much in the way of it. It was Lord of the Flies is not a young adult book.
No,
really.
no. Again, it's very much an adult book that deals with
Children.
Characters that are children.
Whereas the Hunger Games is, I mean, the thing you don't, if you've only seen the movies, the thing you don't get, I think, with the book, and I suppose it's a classic thing about books, is you don't get what's going on in Katniss's head, and it's very much a, oh dear me, oh
yes.
dear me.
Well, that's the thing in the movies, and there's nothing wrong with it because there is that side of her as well. She's very much a strong character. Yes, she's afraid, she's terrified, but she goes ahead, and she's a bit more of a heroine. In the books, she's a terrified child, and everything goes on in her head, and you go through all of her emotions and all of her thoughts, and she has no idea what she's doing. She does not want to be the heroine. She wants to go home and take care of her sister and her mum and not think about anything else that's going on around her. That's all she wants, and it's very much the thoughts of a scared child.
You see, the second movie, which is Catching Fire,
which is amazing, absolutely amazing.
I've heard it compared to kind of those dystopian sports movies like the Running Man and Murderball and this sort of thing. And having not seen the second movie but only read the book, I was sitting there thinking that's not quite the vibe I get from the novel. It's more of a, you'll forgive me, it's more of an Evita style. She's someone who shouldn't be in that power situation, who is, and then has to deal with it.
I disagree with that comparison that you've just mentioned, because I've seen the movie and I've read the book, and I actually think they did an amazing job of portraying that side of Katniss. Okay, I'm done now. This is it. I don't want to add spoilers, but if you've seen the movie and you've read the book, you know how it ends. And going into the second book, she thinks that's it. okay, I've done what I needed to do. And then she's thrust again, and she doesn't want to be there, and that's been portrayed really well by Jennifer Lawrence. And for those of you who haven't seen the movie and are going to see it at some point, or if you've read the book and you're not sure, absolutely watch the movie. The last scene, which I'm not going to reveal, just look at Jennifer Lawrence's face and you get the whole of Katniss's emotion in about 3 seconds, and it hits you.
So you're listening to the Bookworm, and we are on Twitter. And we're on Twitter as Radio Bookworm, and we're on Tumblr as Radio Bookworm, and you can find us on Facebook, and you can also find Fab Radio International on Facebook. You can find them also on Twitter at Fab Radio Int. And this is the Bookworm.
FabRadioInternational.com.
So welcome back. We were just talking about the Hunger Games, and we've been talking about previously, you just missed it, we were talking about Guy Haley's Crash, and we quickly brushed upon one or two other novels. I don't think we can talk about dystopian fiction without mentioning 1984. Let's talk about 1984 for a bit. So have you read 1984? I
haven't.
It's George Orwell.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
that much I knew.
I went into journalism at the age of 16 with a little bit of a little bit of kind of love for George Orwell, a lot of admiration. He fought in the Spanish Civil War, and there's an entire. We'll talk about homage to Catalonia on another show at some point, but. Yeah, very interesting man, very much a socialist, very dour, and as I've gotten older I do look at a lot of his work and I just sit there and I go, oh, cheer up, George.
It's amazing how you reread some of your favourites when you were a kid and you find a whole new level of information in those books.
I was a very moody, pretentious teenager, and
so you haven't changed much then.
And as I grew up and became and lightened up, and I have. Seriously, listeners, I have lightened up over the years. Still quite dour. But
aren't we all, dear?
The thing with 1984 is it has this image, and I'm not spoiling the book for you at all, but it has this image towards the end, which is imagine a boot on the face of humanity pressing down forever, and it's just kind of very kind of totalitarianism is coming, darkness is coming, this is human nature. There's nothing you can do about it.
Just accept it.
We are all Winston Smith, and he romanticises the kind of the lower classes of people as well in the book, and it's very dark, and it presents a dystopia which we do have, and you kind of get this news thing where people are like, oh well, we've got surveillance characters. It's like 1984. No, it's not. We don't have, in this country at least, we don't have that sort of level of torture. We don't have that level of obvious mind control. What we have is another dystopian novel, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where he predicts the fact that what's happened is that we get distracted by all the cool shiny things in the world and let the other people who are more motivated by money and control and greed, they run the show while everyone else is watching.
I'm sorry, isn't this life?
Yeah. Oddly enough, that's what Brave New World. Brave New World is very much about convincing people that they're being better, while in fact they're not. They're still in their cages, and it's about paring down from its mundanity. It's about using the mundane to control and enslave.
It's about building a cage that's so comfortable you'll never know there are bars.
And that is essentially the warning of dystopian fiction, and it should always be the warning of dystopian fiction. And it's the sort of thing that I absolutely adore.
Yeah, there's been a bit of a boom, and again, I mean, as you all might have noticed, I do have a soft spot for sort of what you call young adults, but to me, book is a book. I don't care whether it's children's book, as long as it interests me.
Good story, well told.
Absolutely. And there has been a bit of a boom, and I don't know whether it's on the tail of the Hunger Games or if it was sort of all around the same period where, you know, authors just caught up that there was a bit of a, oh, I've got a bit of a story here to tell, and they were all, you know, dystopian. There is another series that I really, really enjoyed, which is the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. Absolutely wonderful story. I mean, you can run some parallels with the Hunger Games, but I think they are, at the core, the characters, there's a big difference, whereas Katniss is very much all about protecting others, whereas Triss, who's Beatrice, the main character in the Divergent series, is very much about self-discovery. So it's not that she doesn't care about others, but it's a lot about, you know, herself and how she grows and how she fights against what's around her.
For those who don't know the Divergent series, and I know that because of the Hunger Games are so popular, they're going to make it into a movie. But if you want to get ahead of the game, and you know, books giving you the movies years before they're made.
Absolutely.
How would you sum up the Divergence series?
Well, Divergence is very, very interesting. It starts out with this young girl, and the world where she lives is divided in factions, and her faction is a faction that's very much about everyone else and not yourself. And that's not who she is. And she looks around her and sees these other factions, and there's one in particular where the brave ones and the ones without any fear are, and that's what she wants to do. She wants to jump off trains and not care about anything or anyone, and just do her thing and grow. And every basically every kid has to go through this. It's a test that they do to see in which category they would be best suited, in which faction they should be, and give the results to the kids, and then the kids have to pledge themselves to a faction. So Beatrice decides to leave the faction, and leaving your faction means leaving everyone you've ever loved behind. Your faction is your family, so if your parents are somewhere else, you're not allowed to see them, you're not allowed to talk to them. It's completely different.
This is dystopia through class and eugenics as well.
Pretty much. I mean, it feels, and as you read the story, there is a big twist of the plot, but I don't want to give anything away. However, the world where she lives is basically some sort of a post-apocalyptic world where humans have decided that they need to leave and establish which one is their best virtue, and cultivate that virtue and use that virtue to basically make the world a better place and control their basic instincts.
You know, we have to do this again because we haven't even touched on. We could talk about. I mean, I was going to talk about very briefly about We, and the fact that it's a book from the 1920s and we've got a book from the 2010s, and one is all about essentially communism is coming and the hive and hive control, and the other one is about corporate control, and it's the concerns over a century. And then you've got other novels like Margaret Atwood's a novel, Handmaid's Tale. Now, she's a science fiction author, and that's a different conversation, but it's definitely very much a science fiction novel about a dystopia through religious fundamentalism and through the control of human bodies, and again, this sort of eugenics sort of thing. Yeah. Well, we should. It's one of those books that gets a lot of cover.
There'll be more. I mean, I'll totally review in the Divergent series because I've got Allegiant, the third and last book in the series. I've got it on my to-be-read list. So as soon as that's done, I'll probably do an overview so we can talk about dystopia a little bit more.
I'm going to have to read some more Margaret Atwood, aren't I? There's an excuse.
Oh, boo-hoo.
Oh, it's such a hard life. It really is. So, okay, so just in case you've missed everything, we're at fabradiointernational.com.
In a galaxy far, far away, the adventures of Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, and Han Solo did not end with the destruction of the Death Star. Now, the Empire strikes back, and the Star Wars saga continues with the struggle against the dark forces of evil. Read the exciting story in Sphere paperback. Hear John Williams' magnificent score on RSO records and tapes. See The Empire Strikes Back, Certificate U.
So that was the Bookworm, and we are on social media, and if you want to have, just had an advert for Star Wars there. If you want better adverts, you can tweet us at Radio Bookworm, you can tumble us at Radio Bookworm, and you can find us on Facebook. The station itself is fabradiointernational.com, and you can find links to its social media there as well. Coming up next is Page Turner, which is the station's arts and books show. Much later on there's a wrestling show coming up as well, Sports Sundays somehow, and also at about much later as well there'll be the Nightcap, which is on at 8, or is it? Yeah, on at 8 until whenever, I think it's 8 till 10. They'll be talking about breakups, and also having a nice nightcap, which is probably going to be strongly alcoholic given the fact that it's about breakups. So this is the Bookworm, and the next week's show is about
debut books.
We'll be interviewing Juliet Mushins, and we'll be talking about debuts. So exciting new book. Well, not exciting new books. It's
No,
by
first books, I'd say. So books, where did those awesome authors start? Well, they all had to publish that very first book first. So that's what we're going to be talking about, and we'll be reviewing some first books by either new or old authors that you love, and seeing how they've grown.
Let's not do Terry Pratchett's debut books. that would just be mean.
No. But might be able to talk to it when we have our chat.
So good. That's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me and Info.
The Bookworm is a truly outrageous production for Fab Radio International. Written and presented by Ed Fortune and Nympha Hayes. Produced by A.L. Johnson.